What's the most horrifying sound you've ever heard? Story 1. My phone ringing at 4 a.m., caller ID displaying my mother. She forgot about time zones and was just calling me to let me know she made it to her holiday destination safely. Answer. My dad called me 8 times in the span of 2 minutes in the middle of the night once. I was fully dressed and getting in my car to drive the 3-hour trip home to confront whatever tragedy had happened when I finally got him to pick up. He's horrible about answering his phone, even if he just tried to call you. As it turns out, he had just forgotten the combination to our storage unit and was calling to ask me for it. But darn, I hope he never does that to me again. Story 2. Sunday, I heard my daughter scream from a block away my name. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I dead sprinted, and while running heard her continued scream. She was covered in blood. I get to her, and she says, "He's dead." In her arms was her chihuahua. His head had been crushed by a loose pit bull. I can't get that scream out of my head. Story 3. One day when I was probably 7 or 8, I had just woken up and was still laying in bed enjoying the sounds of the birds outside, when all of the sudden I hear my mother's blood-curdling scream from across the house. I just sat there in absolute terror and was only able to conjure up enough courage to call out for her once, and not very loudly. I got out of bed and cautiously snuck over to her room, hoping I wouldn't find her takedown or something, and there she was, freaking out about a 3-legged dead mouse my little brother thought was a toy and had been waving in her face to wake her up. The cat brought her a gift in the middle of the night, and my little brother ended up being the one to find it, in her bed. The story now is hilarious, but the scream that came out of my mother that morning is still hands down the scariest thing I've ever heard. Story 4. I had a cat, and she had kittens. One night, I hear a brutal crunch and turn on the light to see a headless kitten. Answer. Oh dude, one of my cats did that too. Just started to eat her kitten out of nowhere. He wouldn't nurse and was always left out of their kitten cuddle puddle. I would always put him back in. Then one day, his mom started eating him. I freaked out, stopped her without any serious damage, and he died about 20 minutes later. Life is fudge savage and not for the faint of heart. R.I.P. Tiny Tim. Story 5. Camping in the Black Hills. It's around 1:30 a.m. and I wake up having to pee really bad. I get up, and as I'm about to exit the tent to go to the campsite restrooms, I hear what sounds like a woman screaming a little ways back in the woods behind us. I listen to see if I can hear again, because maybe someone actually needs help or something. I didn't hear it again. Either someone got taken down in the woods behind me, or there's a cougar back there. I held it. Story 6. One time while my dog was pooping, the poop got stuck and wouldn't come out of his butt. He was visibly upset about it, but he didn't know what to do, and neither did I. It hadn't happened before. He was a mess, squeaking and tippy, tapping around all frustrated, and I'm just watching him like fudge man. I felt bad for him. I already had the bag ready, so I decided to help him out and just grab the poop from his butt. Initially, I thought it would just be a little clump that got stuck in his fur, but that was not the case. It was just a crazy and inexplicably hard log of shoot. So I now realize I'm not going to be able to simply knock it off his butt and pick it up. I have to extract this poop diamond he's been making. So yeah, I didn't see any other option. I start pulling the poop out of my dog's jerk, and let me tell you, the sound he made while I pulled this thing out of his body was bone-chilling. It was like a cross between a yelp, a bark, a sigh, and a climax. Even now, as I'm typing this out, I have goosebumps. If I had made a recording of it, I swear to you that they'd be using it in Quantico to desensitize FBI recruits. Answer. My dog had constant constipation problems, and we were walking one day and he decided to try and poop. He got some out and kept moving a little bit, trying for more, moving forward a little, trying again. I realized he had some stuck, so I moved toward him to try and help him get it out, and he let out this noise I've never heard before or since. A mix between a bark, yelp, and him telling me to stay away. We went straight home after he finished, and I spent the rest of the day checking on him because I was so worried he was hurt or something. Story 7. A few years ago, my mom called me that my 15-year-old sister had been in a car accident and to meet her at the hospital. She didn't have any details at the time. The police just told her where she was taken. I arrived before my mom at the hospital, and the front desk didn't have my sister registered in the system yet. I started wandering around the hospital trying to find out where she was. I ended up near the trauma unit, and I heard the most horrific screams. I thought to myself, oh God, please don't be my sister. And I peeked into where the screams were coming from. It was my sister, the bones in. Her face were completely shattered, and her cheek was torn away from her face. I was quickly rushed out of the room, but I still have bad flashbacks of seeing her like that and hearing those screams of pain. She survived and is doing better now. Story 8. A man's voice saying, "Hello," at 2 a.m. through the baby monitor in the baby's room. My husband was in bed with me and heard it too. Answer. A few times I would be in the living room when my daughter would be asleep in the bedroom, and I thought I could hear the closet door open. It freaked me out. I would run in, and nothing. Finally, the last time I was actually in the room and found out that sound was coming from my daughter hitting the side of her crib just right with her pacifier that it made the same sound of my closet door opening. Story 9. If you ever hear the actual scream of an endangered person, I mean a blood-curdling yell for help, it really gets you fudge in the head. Answer. Some years ago, I woke up to a strange sound outside. I was half asleep and couldn't hear it clearly, but I assumed it was some kind of owl. The more I laid there and the more awake I became, it was a man screaming, "Help! Help me!" I suddenly got cold chills and woke my then-boyfriend. Door. Why they didn't take him inside or somehow get him to shut up is beyond me. He probably had the whole neighborhood thinking someone was getting beat to passing or something. Story 10. The sounds coming from my best friend's mom when she found out that he had eliminated himself. Everyone's cries and broken voices really pushed me over the edge, but those of his family absolutely shattered me. Answer. I know that sound. Many years ago, one of my friends was taken down about 2 years after we had graduated high school. At the very end of the funeral, when they let the family go up and say last goodbye, this earth-shattering scream wail just shattered the quiet of the funeral home. Her mom totally broke down inconsolably. That's one sound I will never ever forget. I felt her heart disintegrate from losing her 20-year-old daughter. Story 11. The sound of your helmet visor grinding against the road while you slide down it at 70 mph post motorcycle crash is a very chilling sound. I couldn't see what was on the road around me anymore. I could just hear that I was still on it, traveling very fast with no control. Story 12. I work at a hospital. A while back, I was in the queue at one of the little shops there, and there was an old woman shuffling around there with a dude I presume was her son. She seemed to have Alzheimer's or similar, because she was quite befuddled and confused. She kept asking where Jimmy was, how she hadn't heard from Jimmy in ages. Where was he? The guy, in the most patient but exhausted voice imaginable, said, "Mum, we've been over this. Jimmy passed away some time ago now. You need to remember." The noise of sheer agony and horror that came out of the old lady's mouth upon being told, "This fudge hell. If you ever wanted to hear what hell must sound like." Story 13. The sound my cat made when he had an aneurysm then fell down the stairs and slowly died at the bottom. It's been over 10 years and it still fudged me up. Story 14. 1. The sound a rabbit makes when it is caught by a predator. 2. My daughter was always on my shoulders as a toddler. I've gotten her down from behind my neck 1,000 times. Once while in the kitchen, I went to remove her when she slipped and fell to the tile floor. She hit head first. I can describe the sound like a hollow popping noise, this loud thud. I was sure if I looked down, I would see brains all over the floor. I was relieved to hear her cry. Straight to the ER we went. Thankfully, no injuries. Answer. Oh yeah, I looked into rabbit screams based on a comment above, and it's just awful to watch. Especially as people seem to just stand around going, "Aw, so cute," and they don't hear the pain in the crying. It's awful. Sorry to hear about your daughter's fall. I'm glad that evolution took care of it for you in advance and she wasn't injured. But the moment before hearing her cry is one I hope I never experience in whatever form. It sounds awful also, so I'll just put it over here with the rabbit screams. Story 15. Probably not the most horrifying, but it was recent. A few weeks ago, I started hearing the occasional meowing coming from somewhere inside my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor with all windows closed as it's winter. My immediate thought was how a cat got up and in here. I turned the place upside down and couldn't find anything. Sometimes it woke me up in the middle of the night and there's nothing there. I started thinking it was my dead cat coming back to haunt me. It was super creepy, and it honestly messed me up a bit. Turns out it was my fudge hard drive dying and making meowing sounds. I had no idea HDD could make that sound. Sounds exactly like a cat. Story 16. One morning, I was alone in our apartment, still asleep. I'd just gotten married, and my spouse had left for work. I woke up to the sound of a man's voice talking. When I had fully woken up, it had stopped. It scared the crap out of me, and I tried to fire out what it was. The only thing I could find was our tablet had a notification on it. Apparently, a new app on there gave the notification in the form of reading it out loud in a man's voice. Talk about a horrifying sound when you're half asleep and alone. Answer. I can somehow relate to this. I was house-sitting for my fiancé family, and I was awoken at around 2 a.m. by a woman's voice. I'm kind of a private area as it is, so with it being in the middle of the night, I was terrified. I immediately texted my fiancé, and she was trying to calm me down when I heard it again. I was almost crying at this point when she replied, and it said it was her mom's dying Roomba, talking and essentially saying it needed to go on the charger. Yeah, I made sure that thing was on the charger the next 2 nights I stayed there. Story 17. Imagine, it's 9:30 a.m. during the middle of the school holidays, and your younger siblings running up the staircase screaming, "Bushfire." It's enough to jolt you awake instantly. While many don't think it as something horrifying, a lot who have been through it do. The sound of helicopters, water bombers. While we did not lose anything, and thank God for that, it came really close, less than 100 meters away from our house. And this bushfire was small, under 100 hectares. I can't imagine what it's like for those affected and have lost everything they've worked hard for. It's a horrifying experience because of the shock and ash stuck in my eyes. I broke down into tears when our entire estate moved to an area considered safe, for us, just up the hill. My family knows that it takes a lot for me to break, and to this day, it's one of the experiences that'll probably stay with me. I get scared whenever I hear a helicopter flying near where I am. It always brings me back to that moment. Edit. Happy Cake Day. OP. Answer. Until a few days ago, I thought bushfires were scary, only in the sense that you stood to lose everything. Then I saw a video. The video is 3 minutes and 26 seconds long. It is not edited. It starts with a group of firefighters discussing something on the side of the road. 1 minute later, they're gone and the fire is coming in from the right. When the video ends, after 3 minutes and 26 seconds, the whole area is gone. It's straight out of a disaster movie. Anyone not already in a car, they'd be dead. Story 18. I used to run at my local high school track at night because it was peaceful and there is just something about running at night. One night, I invited my friend up and he went, even though he was not a fan of night running. Well, we were sitting on the turf field recovering, and all of a sudden, this black figure started sprinting towards us, shrieking to the top of its lungs. My friend took off running, but I was frozen with fear and my body would not let me move. All I was able to make out was the words, "What the fudge," in a high-pitched, pubescent boy's voice. Once the figure got to me, I was able to kick the figure's legs out and it fell while laughing hysterically. Turns out it was my friend's younger brother in a black morph suit. And that is the story of the last time I ran at night and how I learned him a little meanie. Story 19. The collapse of an enormous water tower high up on a hill above my parents' neighborhood, unleashing over 1.5 million gallons of water in the area. Answer: oh shoot, that kind of thing can be surprisingly lethal. Was anyone hurt? Sorry to hear that anyway. It's only half related, but have you read about the Great Molasses Flood in Boston? It sounds half amusing, almost, until you realize how molasses massively complicates rescue and recovery. It's a great read, assuming you live at the same height as a molasses storage tank or higher than it, just for the psychological security of knowing it won't happen to you. Story 20. I was broadcasting a very sparsely populated minor league baseball game. Could probably count on 2 hands the number of fans that were there. The way the grandstand was built, it was almost right on top of the field. Really close. This was pre-netting down the foul lines. A batter hit a line drive, and it just nailed this poor fan right in the face. Never even had a chance to dodge. That sickening thud is burned in my brain. It was that loud. I threw it to my color guy and immediately got off the air to call 911. Story 21. Feet shuffling around and literally no other sound. It happened when my baby was pulled out of my wife's womb, dead silent and arm drooping over the doctor's hand who pulled him out, about 1 minute after my wife flatlined in the OR. In about 30 minutes, the best day of my life changed to the worst day of my life and left me in a pure stupor wondering how I got here. Then, a few minutes later, my kid finally let out a truly primal screech. A beautiful alien scream from the corner of the room where 5 people hovered over him, and almost immediately after that my wife's heart monitor blipped, and she also was returned back to me. That was our first child, and now have 3 healthy boys together. What a roller coaster that day was. 13 years later, just typing it down still brings tears to my eyes. Story 22. The sound of my leg snapping when I broke it is the most horrifying. Second most horrifying is the sound of the bones scraping together as they set it for a cast. Answer: this happened to my mom when she broke her leg as a teen. Hazy on details, but she was at the beach and a big jerk rock boulder fell from the cliffs she was sitting next to for some shade, and it crushed one of her legs. She said the sound of her leg snapping still turns her stomach when she retells the story. She still has trouble with that leg, so it's a constant, unfortunate, and gruesome reminder. Story 23. The sound a small dog made as 2 pit bulls tore it apart. The second most horrifying noise is the sound the small dog's elderly owner made as he tried to get them off it. I'd just gotten out of the shower and the attack happened on the road outside our place. I ran outside in just a shirt and knickers to try and help, but by then it was too late. It was absolutely horrifying. Story 24. The wife of a motorcyclist screaming when she saw her husband had been decapitated. I was first on the scene, saw them both down but hadn't taken it all in yet. She stood up and then made this god-awful noise inside her helmet which made my hair practically stand on end. And then I noticed he didn't have a head. Not nice. Story 25. I woke up to my brother having a seizure in his sleep. It was like he was trying to shriek and inhale at the same time. It sounded infudge human. Story 26. Two come to mind. One was the sound my mother made when she was in the process of dying from cancer. It was appendix cancer and went malignant. They gave her 3 years and made it somewhere around 7. She went from being able to take care of herself to completely bedridden within 3 days. She was so bad so quickly, the hospice service didn't want to risk moving her from her house to a facility because the stress of transportation could have eliminated her. We had to give her 100 milliliters of liquid morphine every hour to help her pain levels, and something we couldn't let touch our skin every 6 or so. She made it 2 weeks unable to eat or drink on her own. But she just kept holding on, and we could only do so much to keep her comfortable as her organs shut down. My brother and I took shifts with a hospice nurse, and most of the time I was there during the night. She was literally a dried-out husk of a person, and the groaning, moaning sounds she made towards the end haunt me in my sleep. The second is one of my best friends screaming, "I can't leave him in the cemetery," at her 6-year-old son's funeral after he passed from leukemia. BTW, fudge cancer. Story 27. Agonal breathing. My husband and I were on our way to house sit for a friend. We took separate vehicles because we worked opposite shifts of one another. It was nighttime, and it was a few days before Thanksgiving here in the States, so we had just had our first rain of the fall season. Where we live, it doesn't rain often, so the roads were slick from the oil from vehicles not being washed away very often. We were about a mile away from the house we were going to be watching when all of a sudden I got this uneasy feeling. My husband was driving in front of me, and as we pulled up to a 3-way intersection, I noticed metal and glass glistening on the road. Next, I saw what looked like an engine sitting in the middle of the intersection. It turned out that the engine belonged to a semi-truck, Vehicle 1, that was yards down the road. My stomach flipped and I began to pull over and was hoping my husband would just know to do the same, and he did. I thought, there are no flashing lights or sirens. We're the first people here. It had happened seconds before we pulled up to it. I saw a white sedan, Vehicle 2, with the front end smashed in and people standing outside of it. We asked if they were okay and they were shaking, but uninjured. Without talking about it, my husband and I started directing traffic away from the accident after asking a woman nearby if they had called 911. They had. Someone in the distance started shouting, "Does anyone have a knife? There is a woman trapped in her car." Vehicle 3. So I pointed my husband toward the person shouting because I knew he always carried one. So he ran. I continued to direct traffic until an uninvolved semi-truck driver blocked oncoming traffic away from the accident. So now that directing wasn't needed anymore, I turned around to see where else I could be useful. I scanned the scene. This was when I saw another vehicle, Vehicle 4, turned upside down entirely off the road. I didn't see anyone else at that vehicle yet, so I ran to see what I could do. I got about 3 feet away from the driver's side, and that's when I heard it and froze. Agonal breathing. I had learned about it in the past, and for those that are not aware, it's easy to mistake it for actual breathing. It's the brain's final attempts at keeping a body alive. I knew what was happening, so the world stopped for a second. It's a lot different in person versus seeing videos of it. Another woman ran up and told the caller who was on the phone with 911 that he was still breathing, but he wasn't. I knew that we were witnessing and hearing someone dying. So I whispered to the caller to tell the 911 operator that he was worse off than everyone thought. I turned back to the upside-down vehicle and heard a woman, the driver's wife, shouting for help. There were 3 of us at the vehicle now. The woman was crying and asking what happened, as well as repeating how badly the seatbelt was hurting her. 2 of us began pulling debris out of the broken windows of the upside-down vehicle, so the paramedics had more space to get to them, while the 3rd person held the dying man's hand. I was through the back window behind the seat of the driver, with the sounds he was making while his wife continued to wail in pain. In the front of the vehicle, I could see the couple's dog smashed and mangled around them. The steering column had been forced through the center of the vehicle. All we could do was talk to the woman and